Here's your host of the Truth Seekers Radio Show, Angeline Marie.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm at a loss on this one because if something were to happen to Trump, I honestly, I do not like this guy. So I don't know where I'm at today.
And I don't think if Trump even gets elected, which now I think because of all the things I mentioned earlier in this interview, I think it's nearly impossible. A couple of weeks ago, I said he had a greater chance, much better chance than I even imagined of taking this to the finish line. So now everything's changed with Harris and her popularity with the Dems and Trump going back to grievance politics and just, being unhinged and losing his mind. And I always thought Trump was somewhat deranged. And I also thought that Biden was demented. So we had a demented old man and a deranged old man. I was going to pick the deranged, but now I'm not picking either. And so it really saddened me. But I do think that Vance would just bring on anybody, whether it's from the tech field, it could be anybody in any way. But back to Trump, I don't think he would live out his term. I think there's some health issues there. There are times where he has his senior moments too. Remember, he's drinking these Diet Cokes. Now, if you do any research on these artificial sweeteners, and he typically does not get more than 4 hours of sleep. And so he's up the wee hours, tweeting, well, not tweeting now, but, I guess truth socialing all through the night. So his body's got to be under enormous stress. For, not just the legal things, but, just the political and just try not to get, at least 6 to 8 hours sleep most nights and see what's going to happen to you. And so I really do believe that you're going to see him with some major health issues. I don't think he would finish a term. And also, as you mentioned, unless the Secret Service really changes its ways, either candidate could be assassinated.
Right. What about Don Jr.? Do you think he'll ever run in the future?
Let me tell you something. I despise trophy hunters. Now, I'm not talking about hunters for food and population control and all that. But you kill an elephant, a lion, a tiger, and you want to just stuff them on your mantle. I have real issues with those two knuckleheads, the sons. And the other thing is, who's his girlfriend now? Kimberly Guilfoyle. She was the wife of Gavin Newsom when he was mayor in San Francisco. And then she got on Fox, and she she's fairly smart, though. I'll give her that. But they found out through her text messages and some of the complaints in HR that she was showing her body parts and talking about, men that she was dating and what the sex was like. And so that's why she got fired from Fox. All of a sudden, she disappeared from The Five and other shows. And then Don Jr., the more research I've done, apparently he was ending his marriage. So she wasn't the problem, but they knew each other because their kids went to the same schools in New York. And so they started a friendship that blossomed into a romantic relationship. Another Kimberly story was that, remember during the J6 and the speeches that were given, she said that she wanted to get paid for her 3-minute speech. And so she threatened that $60,000 had to be wired into her account, or President Trump was going to do something about it. So here's a woman that is requiring money to speak that on that day of protest for 3 minutes convention. She was yelling and screaming the whole time. Yeah, she was a Fox News personality. Again, just like O'Reilly and some of the others. On the female side, she was, the allegations were of a sexual nature with her.
Well, I'm starting to wonder even how much of all this is real. I mean, it just seems like one big clown show.
That's why I backed away from all this. I said, I can't take this anymore. And then I'm going to have a sizable chunk of my audience say, you have to be loyal to Donald Trump and, put your MAGA hat on and, you must be a good Dem. I've never been a Democrat. I've never registered a Democrat. Never voted for a Democrat. I almost got really involved she did a podcast when I was saying that Trump had no right to be pushing candidates out of the race and he wouldn't debate them. King Donald, I think, is going to have a rude awakening, and some of these legal cases are not going to go away, and he's not going to win the election. So we got to get prepared for that.
Well, Tom, what hope can you give us? I mean, what words would you like to leave with the audience? Do you have any ideal picks that you think maybe is this election over? Maybe for the next one? I don't know. I'm starting to lose all hope in both of these parties. Honestly, though, to tell you, after the last election, I left the Republican Party. So I'm
it's funny you mentioned this, because I kind of maybe I'm a little bit responsible for this. I said, you know what? Trump might be able to hijack one of the parties, but I said the party that, although he did send donations to Harris and Hillary, and he played both sides of the fence when he's a private citizen and businessman, but that's another story for another day. And he did send $5,000 to Harris, during her election back, I think it was 2014 or 2015, so right before he declared. I said, well, and then remake the party. Well, he did. I mean, right now, this Republican Party is controlled by a king, political dictator, not a dictator. He wouldn't be a dictator as president. I never thought that. He is a political dictator of his party, and you cannot disagree. You cannot criticize. You're going to feel the wrath. I mean, he's got tight control. And even though privately these people are talking about Trump and not happy, I mean, this guy has complete dominance over the Republican Party. Alluding back to something I said earlier in the interview, is my hope is that Ron DeSantis in 2028, that's what I'm hoping for. If the Republican Party had been smart, they would have got rid of Trump like the Democrats got rid of Biden for a whole other set of reasons. Made sure that those people didn't have to drop out, and that we could have maybe had a real contest between a DeSantis and a Trump. That's my hope. But the real hope is that we're a resilient country. We have wonderful people here. Trump was pretty brilliant about fight, because that's what we're going to have to do. Fight for our freedom, regardless of what party wins. And maybe we're not happy with the results of either political parties. And that I think it's got a little late now to try to form a legitimate third party. I think we just have to keep our faith in God, our faith in our wonderful, great country. Don't be loyal to any man or woman or party. It's always about principle, about the policies. And it's about being true to oneself and being true to the founders and the framers of this country and their vision and what they blessed us with and what God has blessed our country with. And that's the way I would leave it.
Absolutely. Do you think there's any truth to them letting these illegals vote in this election?
It's not going to happen. It's there's some checks and balances, and it's just not going to happen because matter of fact, what Trump should have done in 2020, his daughter and other family members have really put into an election integrity unit where and they've also infiltrated a lot of election boards so that the counting, even though it wasn't as vastly contested in terms of illegal voting, but there were some irregularities. Plus, Trump allowed for and didn't contest it at the time a whole month to allow people to vote because of the so-called pandemic. So that changed the game a lot. Because a lot of people that would have missed that one day of voting or putting something in the mail, they had 30 days to get people to drive them to a drop box or drive them to an election booth or help them get it into the mail on time. So I think that's not going to be the issue. The issue is going to be that Trump is his own worst enemy. Trump brought race into this race.
So, Tom, on a personal note, do you have any plans to come back and broadcast more regularly again, or?
Well, this is giving me the impetus. This is giving me more incentive and more motivation and kind of lit the fire in my belly. So, I think I need to create more streaming programs. And I'll look and see if there's broadcast opportunities where stations or networks might be willing to have me again. And again, I'm saddened by the fact that we've got people so solidly in the Democrat column and so solidly now wearing MAGA hats that they can't think for themselves. So that's one of the reasons that I created the program, a decade ago, Free Thinker Radio, because I want people to think for themselves and not be locked in to these labels. I'm still going to say with Tom Donahue Reports. Another idea I have is Tom Donahue Briefs, where I might just give a quick briefing on something, in a more concise and brief way, and not have to say, okay, I got to sit down here and do 30 minutes. It could be 3 minutes. It could be 5 minutes. So I thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate people giving me this opportunity to listen and agree or disagree. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I like to think that when I was doing talk radio, that I appreciate more informed opinions, but even if it's not, even if it's uninformed, that's okay because you're entitled to it. But I take more stock in people that actually do their homework and their research and don't just buy into any conspiracy theory and don't just say I'm an R or a D and I defend them no matter what. If someone is immoral, if someone's a reprobate, someone's doing reprehensible, illegal, unconstitutional, unlawful things, you cannot say, oh, because they're wearing an R or a D, we have to look the other way. And that's what's happened in both parties. People are looking the other way and not looking at it from a moral and a just and a lawful perspective. And so that's what I always do. I'm going to tell you the truth, even if it hurts.
Well, Tom, why don't you tell the audience where they can find you, your website address and your podcasts and your work?
Well, the best way is when you type in on the search engines Tom Donahue, put in Tom Donahue reports, because that'll narrow your search. Because some people have said, well, were you that 400-pound DJ that's deceased from San Francisco? And I say no. And at first I thought they were referring to Chuck Harder, because Chuck Harder was a pretty big dude, and Chuck and I shared networks and had quite the history and story, even though we saw things a little differently, but we were still on the same or at least similar mission. But I do have TomDonahueReports.com as a very simple, basic website. I am on almost every major podcast directory that even you discovered goes way back. I didn't even realize that some of those shows from ancient time are on some of these, where it's iTunes or some of these other things. So it's kind of branched out into many podcast platforms. And I want to thank you for your individual stations, streaming stations, that continue to carry some of my outdated material, although it's really not all that outdated when you look at the principles behind it and the analysis that still applies today. So I know that you have a couple different stations. One is the Patriot Classics, and you have the Truth Seekers. Now you have Truth Seekers Radio, and then you have K-Star.
Yeah,
give us those specifics.
You're on PatriotRadioClassics.com and K-Star. But what I love about Patriot Radio Classics, I have your real old stuff on there. And you're right. When I listen to that today, it's as though we're talking about today, even though it was years ago, 10, 15 plus years ago. It's amazing that we're still rehashing the same old garbage. So anyway, I thank you so much, Tom, for being on today. I appreciate it. And I'm hoping that now you'll want to come back and talk to us and give us updates. Because honestly, I don't cover much politics for obvious reasons, but I thank you so much for being on today.
Well, I just think that, my life experience, I remember when Bo Greit said to me when I re-entered the ranks of talk radio again, he said, Tom, unlike before where you were reliant on, and it was good that you would interview me and you'd interview Eustace Mullins and various others, but he said you have a more life experience now, and you have a more mature way of analyzing and being more the focus on what you think and what you feel and what you believe and what you've learned. Bo Greit was absolutely right that I'm not opposed to interviewing others, but I enjoy being a guest, because if someone can draw out from me the things that I have learned over the last several decades in my fight for freedom, I'm a truth seeker, a liberty lover. I'm someone that is patriotic to the vision, and the principles of the founders and the framers of this country. It's always about America first, and it's always about protecting America and our values. What's important to us, our faith, our family, our freedom. So again, I really appreciate it this time, and you're doing great work, and I'm really glad to be associated with you and your listeners.
Thank you so much, Tom. And listeners, until next week, God bless.
For nearly 250 years, Americans have enjoyed a level of civility and prosperity. crooked globalist operatives threaten it all. And the chaos around us is the result of an underlying spiritual war. See through the deception and discover the root of the world's conflicts. A startling new book from the host of the Truth Seekers radio show, Soulless Society. Available on Amazon in softcover, Kindle ebook, and Audible. Visit www.soullesssocietybook.com.